We're coming from a place of love, Mom. My daughter Brenda's voice was so calm, so reasonable. She and her husband, Mark, sat across from me in my own living room, the one I paid for. Mark and I are genuinely worried about your cognitive decline. The words just hung there in the air. Cognitive decline. We need to talk about managing your affairs, she continued, her hands folded neatly like a PTA president. Before you make a mistake you can't undo. I looked at these two people who had lived rent-free in my building for almost a decade. They weren't just insulting me, they were staging a takeover. But that explosion was just the final crack in a foundation that had been crumbling for years. To understand how we reached that breaking point, you have to understand the house that my own hands built. That night, long after Brenda and Mark had gone back to their unit, I stood in the hallway of mine, just listening to the silence. Cognitive decline. The words echoed, feeling slick and wrong, like oil spilled on a clean floor. I ran my hand along the banister of the main staircase. It's oak, not the cheap, quick-growth pine you see in new builds, but 100-year-old oak. It's got a deep, warm grain that glows even in the moonlight. I know every curve, every dip, every tiny imperfection because I'm the one who uncovered them. My late husband Frank and I bought this duplex 30 years ago. It was a wreck, a fixer-upper in the truest sense, back when that term meant you're out of your mind. Not you'll make a great profit on HGTV. I remember the weekend we tackled this staircase. We had sawdust in our hair, in our coffee. Frank was on his hands and knees, replacing the split treads. I was the one with the chemical stripper and a mask, painstakingly rescuing these spindles from 8 decades of goopy lead-based paint. I remember my fingers, raw and split, catching on the wood as I hand-sanded every single inch. I remember the smell of mineral spirits and wood stain, a smell that, to me, was the smell of pride. I closed my eyes, and for a second, I could still feel the grit under my nails. That was the reality. That was the truth. And that is why cognitive decline felt like such a betrayal. It wasn't just an insult. It was an erasure. They were trying to erase the work. Erase me. Frank passed away 12 years ago. Cancer. Fast and cruel. The house felt too big. The silence too loud. Brenda, my daughter, was lost. Her wellness coach business, whatever that meant, was failing. Mark, her husband, was always between ventures. They were drowning in high-interest debt and what they called bad luck. They needed a fresh start. So, I made the offer. Move into the upstairs unit, I said. It's got its own entrance, its own kitchen. Just pay what you can toward utilities. Save up. Get back on your feet. It felt like the right thing to do. It's what Frank would have wanted. He always used to say, "Family is the only thing that's not a fixer-upper, Eleanor. It's the finished product." Oh, Frank, you were wrong about that. What you can turned into nothing. Getting back on their feet turned into a permanent 10-year residency in my life. Their unit was upstairs, but their lives spilled down into mine. It started slowly. My kitchen wasn't right. One day I came home from my library volunteer shift and found my grandmother's cast-iron skillet, the one I'd seasoned for 30 years, in the trash. Brenda was standing there in her yoga pants, holding a green smoothie. "Mom," she said, in that same calm, therapeutic voice. "I did you a favor. Do you know the toxins that leach from this? We're curating a cleaner environment for all of us." She'd replaced it with a flimsy, chemical-coated pan from a big box store. It felt like a toy. Then it was my money. Not big amounts, just a steady leak, a constant drip. "Mom, the car's making a noise. Can you spot me for the repair?" "Mom, Mark's crypto venture is this close to popping. He just needs a little more liquidity." It was always liquidity or ventures or energetic investments, fancy words for taking your mother-in-law's retirement savings. The worst part, the part that really sticks, was the boundaries. Brenda's boundaries were a one-way street. She could walk into my unit anytime, declutter my life, and curate my pantry. But when I needed something, "Mom, I have to protect my own energy. I had a doctor's appointment last month, just a checkup. She promised to take me. An hour before we were supposed to leave, I got a text. Can't make it. My aura is just really compromised today. You understand." I understood. I understood I was paying $40 for an Uber, while her brand new SUV, the one I'd co-signed for, sat in my driveway. They were living. I was just a resource. A utility, like the water or the gas. Just the old lady downstairs who pays for everything. My only light in all this was Leo, my grandson. He's 16, a quiet kid, smart as a whip. He sees things. He lives up there with them, but he escapes. He comes down to my unit to fix my Wi-Fi, which is really just an excuse to sit in the quiet and read my old books. He came down last Tuesday, looking pale. Mom and Dad are fighting about money again, he mumbled, not looking up from his phone. They're always fighting about money, I said, pouring him a ginger ale. No, Grandma, it's different. He looked up, and I saw the fear in his eyes. They're talking about you, about your next steps. A cold little knot tightened in my stomach. What steps, Leo? He looked guilty, like he was telling a secret he shouldn't know. I used Mom's laptop to check my email. She left her own open. Grandma, what's memory care? I set the glass down. The small clink was the only sound in the room. What did you see, Leo? An email from a place called Senior Solutions. The subject was facility tour and intake. Grandma, they're looking at places to put you. The blood drained from my face. I'd spent 10 years as their safety net, and they were pricing out a cage for me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run up those stairs and what? But I didn't have to. Because that night, they came to me. They sat me down. Brenda had that same concerned look she had when she threw out my skillet. Mark looked like a vulture trying to pass as a financial advisor. Mom, Brenda started, we've been talking. About my next steps, I asked. My voice was sharp. It surprised me. It surprised them. Brenda, to her credit, didn't miss a beat. See, this is what we mean. You're getting paranoid, Mom. Agitated. It's not healthy. Mark chimed in. We're just trying to help, Eleanor. Then he slid a stack of papers across my coffee table, the one Frank and I refinished together. What's this? It's a power of attorney, Mark said. All business, just to help you pay your bills, make sure nothing gets missed. Brenda put her hand on mine. Her skin was soft, uncalloused. We're just so worried about you. We found a great lawyer. And that's when she said it. The line that changed everything. The line that snapped the last thread of the woman I used to be. We're coming from a place of love, Mom, but Mark and I are genuinely worried about your cognitive decline. We need to talk about managing your affairs. Before you make a mistake you can't undo. I looked at the papers. I looked at my daughter. And for the first time, I didn't see my little girl. I didn't see the wellness coach. I saw a con artist. And in that second, I knew exactly what I had to do. They thought I was losing my mind. They had no idea I was about to use it. I looked down at the power of attorney forms on my coffee table. The pen in Mark's hand sat next to them, gleaming under the lamplight. It felt like a weapon. Brenda was still smiling. That soft, concerned, curated smile. So, Mom, she said, her voice a gentle prod. Let's just get this taken care of. Get what taken care of, Brenda? My voice came out flat, cold. It didn't sound like me, and I saw her flicker with surprise. The paperwork, like we discussed. To help you. Before I could answer, the door to my unit burst open, slamming against the wall. We all jumped. It was Leo, my grandson. His face was pale, his chest heaving. He was holding his mother's laptop open. Leo, Brenda snapped, her wellness voice gone. What is the meaning of this? You don't just barge in. What is memory care? He yelled. The words shot out of him, a desperate, angry bullet. The room went absolutely still. Mark froze. Brenda's face for 1 second was a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. She knew. She was caught. What did you just say? Mark tried, his voice low and threatening. I saw your email, Leo shouted, his voice cracking with a 6-year-old's rage. He looked at me, his eyes wide and filling with tears. Grandma, they're trying to put you in a home, a place called Senior Solutions. Brenda lunged for the laptop, but Leo pulled it back. You're paranoid, just like your grandmother, she hissed, her eyes darting between me and her son. I just watched. I felt nothing. Not sadness, not even anger, just a cold, sharp clarity. It was like watching a play where I finally understood the plot. Brenda and Mark were scrambling, trying to spin it. We were just researching. It was a just in case. You don't understand the pressure we're under. I held up one hand, and they stopped. All three of them. The shouting, the accusations, the fake apologies, they all just stopped. I turned to my grandson. "Leo," I said, and my voice was perfectly steady. "Thank you. You can put the laptop down." He did, placing it on the table like it was a bomb. Then, I picked up my own phone. I ignored the POA papers. I ignored my daughter and her husband. I looked right at Leo, the only person in that room who had told the truth. "Leo," I said calmly, "I need you to call Mr. Henderson. His number is in my contacts under H. Tell him Eleanor says the 1953 edition is ready for appraisal. Can you do that for me?" Leo stared, confused. "What? Grandma, Please, honey, it's important. The 1953 edition is ready for appraisal." Brenda scoffed, a nervous, ragged sound. "What are you talking about? What edition? See, Mark? She's not making any sense. She's having an episode." Leo, bless his heart, just trusted me. He found the number, put the phone to his ear, and repeated the words. "Hi, Mr. Henderson? This is Leo. My grandmother, Eleanor, asked me to call. She said, the 1953 edition is ready for appraisal. Yes, sir, she's right here." I took the phone from his shaking hand. "Charles," I said, "I'm sorry to use the code, but yes, it's time. They just tried to have me sign a power of attorney. No, I'm fine. They underestimated me. Can I see you first thing tomorrow? 9 a.m.? Thank you." I hung up. Brenda's face was a storm of confusion and fury. "Who is Charles? What code? Mom, you are not well. Get out," I said. It wasn't a yell. It was a statement. "What?" Mark said, laughing. "Eleanor, don't be. Get out, both of you. Go back upstairs to your unit." "My unit," Brenda shrieked. "This is my home." "Is it?" I stood up. "And I picked up those POA papers. This was a declaration of war, Brenda. And you have no idea what you just started. Now, get out of my sight before I call the real police." They left. Not because they wanted to, but because for the first time, they saw something in my eyes that wasn't Mom, it wasn't Grandma, it was owner. The next morning, I was at Mr. Henderson's office at 8:45 a.m. I wasn't carrying a purse. I was carrying a 12-pound, 3-ring binder, the 1953 edition. "Eleanor," Charles said, ushering me in. "He's a kind man, a few years younger than me. He was Frank's estate lawyer and became mine. Are you truly all right?" Using the code word. "The code word was for this," I said, placing the binder on his polished mahogany desk with a heavy, satisfying thud. He looked at it. The label on the spine, printed in my old librarian-style font, just read, "Duplex, 1995 present." "Good Lord, Eleanor," he said. "The archive," I said. "They called me old. They called me confused. They said I had cognitive decline. Well, this is my cognition." He opened it. He sat there for almost an hour, just turning the pages. He was silent. I just drank my coffee. He saw the first tab, 1995. Purchase. The original deed, in my and Frank's names. Then the document from 2004, after Frank's passing, putting the entire property solely in my name. He saw the next tab, 2015, B and M, move in. "What is this?" he asked, pointing to a ledger. "That," I said, "is every bill they didn't pay. I kept the originals. Water, gas, electric. For 10 years, they were supposed to pay what they could. What they could was apparently nothing." He kept turning. He saw the tab labeled Personal Loans, Unpaid. "You kept a record," he breathed. "I'm a librarian, Charles. We always keep the records." He saw the copy of the $5,000 check from 2016 for Mark's first venture. The memo line read, "Repay by the 1st of January 2017. He saw the $2, zero, for the car repair. The $300 for the crypto liquidity. He saw the co-sign agreement for the SUV they were driving. He saw the property damage tab with the receipt for the new, non-toxic pan and a little note from me. Replaced my 1940 era skillet. Sentimental value. Priceless. Replacement cost. $39.99. He saw the printouts of the text messages, the Protect My Energy text, the Aura is Compromised text, stapled neatly to the $40 Uber receipt for my doctor's appointment. Finally, he closed the binder. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Eleanor," he said, his voice quiet, This is the most meticulous, terrifying, and beautiful thing I have ever seen. This isn't an archive, it's an indictment." "I know," I said. "So, can we do it?" "Do what, Eleanor? With this? You could sue them for a decade's worth of back rent and personal loans. You could—" "I don't want to sue them," I interrupted. "I don't want their money. I just want them out. I want to be free. I want to sell the duplex, Charles. I want to liquidate." He blinked. "Sell it? But where will you live? And where will they live?" "With all due respect, Charles, where will they live has been my problem for 10 years. It's time for it to be their problem." He smiled. A real wide smile. Yes it is. The market is white hot. A paid-off duplex in that neighborhood? We can have it listed by the end of the week. We can have an offer in 10 days. "Good," I said, standing up. "List it. I want a cash offer. I want it done fast. And Charles, I want you to be the one to serve them the eviction notice." But to use it, I needed to be sure. I was a librarian, after all. You don't just act on impulse, you act on evidence. And the universe, in its own strange way, was about to provide it. The slow burn had been going on for years. The constant, low-level disrespect that's so quiet it makes you feel crazy for noticing it. It was Brenda's wellness language, which was really just a new, shiny wrapper for old-fashioned selfishness. It was the way she'd curate my kitchen, throwing out my perfectly seasoned cast-iron skillet because it was toxic. It was the way Mark would borrow $300 for a can't-miss crypto investment that always, somehow, missed. It was the texts. Oh, the texts. I had a doctor's appointment, just a routine checkup. Brenda had promised to drive me. An hour before, my phone buzzed. "Mom, I can't take you. I have to protect my own energy. It's important to set boundaries. You understand." I understood. I understood I was paying $40 for an Uber, while her brand new SUV, the one I'd co-signed for, sat in my driveway. But that was just the compression, the slow, daily squeezing of my life. The explosion was coming, and it would be delivered by my grandson, Leo. Leo is 16. He's a quiet kid, a tech whiz. He's the one who escapes the tension upstairs by coming down to my unit to fix my Wi-Fi, which is really just an excuse to sit in the quiet and read my old science fiction paperbacks. He came down last Tuesday. He was supposed to be running a diagnostic on my router. He'd been at it for maybe 20 minutes in the study when I heard him make a sound, a small, sharp intake of breath. "Leo, honey, everything all right in there?" I called from the kitchen. Silence. I walked to the study doorway. He was sitting at my desk, but he wasn't looking at my old desktop. He was looking at his mother's laptop. The screen was bright, and he was frozen, his face pale. "Leo," I said, stepping in. He jumped, and his hand slammed the laptop shut. The click of it was loud in the quiet room. "What is it?" I asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "It's nothing, Grandma. Just a stupid pop-up." He wouldn't meet my eyes. He was a terrible liar. "Leo, what did you see?" He just shook his head, his eyes wide. "I shouldn't have. I used Mom's laptop to check my email, and hers was still logged in. An email popped up. I put my hand on his shoulder. An email about what? He finally looked at me, and his eyes were full of a terrible adult knowledge. "Grandma, what is Senior Solutions?" The blood in my veins went cold. It was like stepping on a stair that isn't there. "What did it say, Leo?" It was a thank you," he said, his voice trembling. "Thank you for touring our facility. We've attached the intake forms for our memory care program." He didn't need to say any more. Memory care. That's what they called it. A clean, therapeutic, curated word for a cage. Leo was staring at me, waiting for me to. I don't know, cry, yell, fall apart, but I didn't. I just stood there, my hand on his shoulder. I felt the old 100-year-old oak of my house under my feet. I felt the weight of the last 30 years, and I felt the last tiny thread of mom just snap. I looked at my grandson, this sweet boy caught in the middle. Leo, I said, and my voice was perfectly calm. I need you to close that email, log your mother out, and you and I are going to forget this conversation ever happened. Do you understand me? It's very important. He just nodded, horrified. I walked back to the kitchen, and I saw my own reflection in the dark window over the sink. I saw my gray hair, I saw the wrinkles, and I saw, finally, the woman they had mistaken me for. An old, frail, confused woman. Cognitive decline, I whispered to the reflection. Okay, let's see what a little cognitive decline can do. I went to my desk, and I pulled out the key to my old file cabinet, the one in the basement, the one they didn't even know existed. The archive was open. And it told the whole ugly story. I spent that night in the basement, under a single flickering fluorescent bulb, with my ghosts. I relived 10 years of small favors and temporary loans that, when added up, totaled a 5-figure betrayal. I saw, in my own neat handwriting, a decade of my life being siphoned away. I went to bed as a mother. I woke up as a creditor. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Brenda. Morning, Mom. Mark and I are bringing over some scones from that new gluten-free bakery. Need to have a quick family chat. 10 a.m.? The emoji felt like a taunt. A quick family chat. The formality was a blaring alarm. See you then, I texted back. At 10:02, they were at my door. Brenda was holding the box of scones like a peace offering. They smelled like sweet cardboard. Mark was wearing a polo shirt, tucked in. He was trying to look responsible. Mom, Brenda said, giving me a kiss on the cheek that didn't land. Thanks for seeing us. Let's just sit in the living room. We sat, me, in my armchair. Them, together on the sofa. 2 predators, a matched set. Brenda started, her voice in that compassionate coach register. Mom, we've been talking. A lot. And, well, we're worried about you. Worried I'll finally change the locks? I thought. I just nodded, my hands folded in my lap. You've been forgetful lately, she continued. That thing with the stove last week, and you've seemed so agitated. The thing with the stove was me turning it off after she had left a burner on. Agitated was me asking Mark when he planned to pay back the $500 from Christmas. Mark leaned forward, placing his hands on his knees. Eleanor, he said, he only used my first name when he wanted something. You've worked so hard your whole life. You've taken care of everyone. It's time you let us take some of the burden off your shoulders. What burden, Mark? My voice was quiet. The complexity of modern life, he said, waving his hand vaguely. Online bill payments, property taxes, investments. It's a lot for anyone. We want to help. And then, from the leather satchel he always carried, the one I bought him for his birthday, he pulled them. A stack of papers, crisp, white, legal-sized. They looked important. They looked final. We found a great lawyer. Brenda chimed in, her voice bright. He's just so understanding. He works with families in transition. Mark slid the stack across my coffee table, the one Frank and I refinished. The papers slid over the dark oak grain, covering it completely. What is this? I asked, though I already knew. My heart was a cold, hard stone in my chest. It's a power of attorney, Mark said, his voice all business. It's just a simple document. It lets me and Brenda help you pay your bills, make sure nothing gets missed. It gives us the ability to manage your accounts, just to protect you. Protect me, I repeated. It wasn't a question. Yes, Brenda said, leaning in, her eyes wide with fake sincerity. She placed her soft, uncalloused hand on mine. It felt like a spider. Mom, we're coming from a place of love. You have to know that. But Mark and I, we're genuinely worried about your cognitive decline. There it was. The memory care email, dressed up in legal language. The final, brutal insult. We need to manage your affairs, Brenda said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Before you make a mistake you can't undo. Mark clicked a pen, a sleek, silver pen. That click was the only sound in the room. He tapped the last page. "You just sign here, Eleanor. And here. And we can take care of everything." He slid the pen across the table. It stopped, resting against the edge of the legal papers. I just stared. I stared at the signature line. I stared at the pen. I wasn't seeing them. I was seeing the archive in my mind. I was seeing the $5,000 check for Mark's first venture in 2016, the $40 Uber receipt, the Protect My Energy text. Brenda was smiling, waiting. "Mom," the pen sat there, waiting. The pen sat there, waiting. It was a sleek, silver ballpoint. Expensive. Probably a gift from some venture Mark had conned. It rested against the signature line, a silent, gleaming demand. "Mom," Brenda said, her voice dropping into that soft, caring tone that always meant she was about to stick the knife in. "Let's just get this taken care of." Mark cleared his throat, a little impatient. "Eleanor, it's just a formality." I looked at the pen, then at the papers. Power of attorney. I looked at my daughter's loving face, cognitive decline. The front door to my unit burst open, slamming against the wall with a crack that made my heart leap into my throat. We all yelled. Brenda shot to her feet. "What in God's name?" It was Leo. My grandson was standing in the doorway, his chest heaving. His face was a ghostly, terrified white, and in his hands he was holding his mother's open laptop. "Leo," Brenda shrieked, her wellness voice instantly vanishing, replaced by the raw panic of a cornered animal. "What is the meaning of this? You do not barge into my— What is memory care?" Leo's voice was a ragged shout that sliced through the room and hung there, vibrating. The room didn't just go quiet. It died. Brenda and Mark were frozen. Their faces— oh, their faces. It wasn't confusion. It was the pure, cold shock of being caught. "What did you just say?" Mark's voice was a low, threatening growl. He started to move toward Leo. "I saw it," Leo yelled, taking a step back, holding the laptop up like a shield. "I saw your email. Senior Solutions. You're trying to put her in a home. You're looking at intake forms." Brenda lunged for the laptop. "You have no right. You're just like her. You're paranoid." "Am I?" Leo spun the laptop around, and there it was. The memory care email, bright and damning on the screen. I just sat there, in my armchair. I looked at the power of attorney papers on my coffee table. I looked at the memory care email on the laptop, the pen, the con, the cage. Brenda was hissing at her son, trying to snatch the computer. Mark was blustering about privacy and misunderstanding. They were so loud. I held up one hand, and just like that, they stopped. All of them. The shouting, the scrambling, they just stopped. And they all looked at me. I felt nothing. No tears, no fear. The fog of 40 years of being a good mother just evaporated, and all that was left was cold, hard, beautiful clarity. I turned my head, ignoring Brenda and Mark completely. They ceased to exist. I looked only at my grandson, the only person in that house who had told the truth. "Leo," I said. My voice was like steel. It didn't waver. It didn't shake. I didn't even recognize it. "Leo," I said again, "I need you to do something for me. Put your mother's laptop down." He did, placing it on the table right next to the POA papers, the two pieces of the puzzle, side by side. "Now," I said, "take my phone. Call Mr. Henderson. His number is in my contacts under H. I need you to tell him something." Leo just stared, his eyes wide. "Grandma, Tell him this, Leo. Exactly. Eleanor says the 1953 edition is ready for appraisal. Can you do that for me?" Brenda let out a sound, a nervous, choking laugh. "What? What edition? Mom, what are you talking about? See, Mark? She's not making any sense. This is exactly what we were talking about. She's having an episode." Mark nodded, regrouping. "She's delusional. But Leo, bless his heart, just trusted me. His eyes were still locked on mine. He saw the steel. He found the number. He put the phone to his ear. "Hello, Mr. Henderson." "Yes, sir. This is Leo, Eleanor's grandson. She asked me to call. She said, the 1953 edition is ready for appraisal." Leo paused, listening. Yes, sir. She's right here. I took the phone. Charles, I said, my voice crisp. I'm sorry to use the code, but yes, it's time. They just tried to have me sign a power of attorney. No, I'm fine. They underestimated me. Can I see you first thing tomorrow? 9 a.m.? Thank you. I hung up. Who is Charles? Brenda demanded, her voice shrill. What code? I stood up. Slowly. I picked up the POA papers. I picked up the pen, and I held them out to Mark. You forgot these, I said. Then I looked at my daughter. Get out, I said. What? She shrieked. Get out, both of you. Go back upstairs, to your unit. My unit, she screamed. This is my home. Is it? I walked to my front door and opened it wide. The sudden light from the hallway was bright, almost blinding. You have 30 seconds to be on the other side of this door before I call the police for trespassing. You can't, Brenda sputtered. You're a cruel, sick old woman. I am, I said. You're right. Now, get out. They left. I didn't slam the door. I closed it, very, very quietly. I slid the deadbolt, and the soft thunk of the metal tumbler sliding into the frame felt like the most final sound in the world. I stood there for a full minute, my back to the door, just breathing in the silence of my apartment. It wasn't a home, not really. Not for a long time. It was a resource, a bank, a free hotel, and I had been its unpaid, unappreciated manager. I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I didn't call a friend. I went to my bedroom, put on a sensible pair of shoes, grabbed my keys, and went down to the basement. Brenda and Mark never came down here. It was damp, unfinished, and smelled like concrete and history. It was where my archive lived. They thought I was a doddering old fool who couldn't remember what she had for breakfast. They forgot I was a librarian. For 35 years, my job wasn't just shelving books. It was building systems. It was indexing, cross-referencing, and protecting assets. My life's work was creating order out of chaos. And for the last 10 years, Brenda and Mark had been my most detailed, cross-referenced, and chaotic project. I unlocked the old fireproof safe tucked behind the water heater. Inside, there wasn't any jewelry, there wasn't any cash, there was just one thing. A 12-pound black 3-ring binder. The spine was perfect. The label, printed from my old Dymo label maker, was perfectly centered. It read, Duplex, 1,995 present. I carried it upstairs. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I knew every page by heart. I placed it on the kitchen table, next to the box of uneaten, gluten-free scones. Then I went to bed. I slept for 8 straight hours, deeper than I had in a decade. The next morning, I was at Mr. Henderson's office at 8:45 a.m. Eleanor, Charles said, bustling out to meet me in the lobby. He was a kind man, a few years younger than me. He'd been Frank's estate lawyer, and he became mine. Are you all right? That call from your grandson. The 1953 edition. I haven't heard that code since Frank. Well, did you sign anything? No, Charles, I didn't sign. I walked past him into his office. It smelled like leather and old paper, a smell I'd always found comforting. But I brought you this. I hefted the binder onto his polished mahogany desk. It landed with a thud that echoed in the quiet room. Charles just stared at it. Good Lord, Eleanor. What is that? The sum of all their sins. The 1953 edition, I said. Frank's favorite Buick, the one thing we couldn't afford to lose. I am, as they informed me yesterday, suffering from cognitive decline. This is my cognition. He opened it. He sat there for almost an hour. He didn't speak. He just turned the pages. He saw the first tab, 1995, purchase, the original deed, in my and Frank's names. Then the survivorship document from 2004, putting the entire paid-off property solely in my name. He saw the second tab, 2015 B&M, move-in, a single handwritten page. My notes from our conversation. No rent. Will pay what they can toward utilities. Temporary. He saw the third tab, utilities, unpaid. He let out a low whistle. It was almost 3 inches thick. 10 years of original itemized gas, electric, and water bills. Each one had a small, neat post-it note on it. B&M portion, $X. Paid. $0. He kept turning. He got to the tab labeled Personal Loans Unpaid. You kept a record, he breathed, looking up at me. I'm a librarian, Charles. We always keep the records. He saw the copy of the $5,000 check from 2016. The memo line, in my own handwriting, read, Mark's venture Hazone, repay by the 1st of January 2017. He saw the $300 transfer for the crypto liquidity. He saw the printout of the co-sign agreement for Brenda's SUV, the one I was now the primary obligor on. He turned again. Property damage and expenses. He stopped. He actually laughed. It was a short, sharp bark of disbelief. He tapped the page. Is this? The cast iron skillet, I confirmed. A 1,940 seconds era Griswold, thrown out for being toxic. I stapled the receipt for the $39.99 non-toxic pan she replaced it with. You'll note the original's sentimental value is listed as priceless. Finally, he reached the last tab, Communications. He read the printout of the Protect My Energy text. He saw the Aura is compromised text, stapled neatly to the $40 Uber receipt from my own doctor's appointment. He closed the binder. He leaned back in his big leather chair. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose, hard. Eleanor, he said, his voice quiet, I have been a lawyer in this town for 40 years. I have handled divorces, frauds, and bitter family disputes, and I must tell you, this is the most meticulous, terrifying, and beautiful thing I have ever seen in my professional career. He shook his head. This isn't an archive. It's an indictment. He called it terrifying. I just called it being prepared. So, he said, putting his glasses back on, all business now. With this, we can sue them for a decade of back rent, plus interest. We can get a judgment for the personal loans. We can. No. He stopped. No, Charles. I don't want to sue them. I don't want their money. I don't want a judgment. That just ties me to them for even longer. I don't want anything from them. I leaned forward. I want them out. I want to be free. What are you saying, Eleanor? I want to sell the duplex, Charles. I want to liquidate the whole thing. He blinked. Sell it? But where will you live? And, my God, Eleanor, where will they live? With all due respect, Charles, I said, standing up and smoothing my skirt, where will they live has been my full-time unpaid job for 10 years. It's time for it to be their problem. A slow smile spread across his face. Yes, it is. The market is white hot. A paid-off duplex in this neighborhood? It won't last a week. We can have an offer over asking in 10 days. Good, I said. List it. I want a cash offer. I want it done fast. And Charles, yes, I want you to be the one to serve them the eviction notice. Charles Henderson, God bless him, didn't even flinch. He just nodded, a grim little smile on his face. Eleanor, it would be my genuine pleasure. What happened next was a masterclass in efficiency. Charles listed the duplex on a Thursday. By Friday afternoon, there was a bright blue for sale sign hammered into my front lawn. I watched from my living room window as Brenda and Mark came home. They stopped their SUV in the driveway and just stared at it. They looked at the sign like it was a personal insult, which of course it was. Brenda stormed up to the sign as if she was going to rip it out of the ground herself. Mark, ever the fintech entrepreneur, just paced on the sidewalk, rubbing his face, probably trying to calculate just how fast his free ride was ending. Then, the text started. My phone, which had been so wonderfully quiet, began to buzz itself into a frenzy on the kitchen counter. You are destroying this family. This is unhinged, Mom. You're proving our point. Mark is looking at his legal options. You will regret this. I didn't reply. I just archived them, one by one. The archive was, after all, still open. Charles, a true shark, had scheduled the open house for that Saturday, and it was a madhouse. The market was white hot. My little neighborhood, my solid, hand-restored duplex. It was a gold mine. People swarmed the place. They loved the good bones. They admired the original hardwood floors. They ran their hands over the oak banister. I'd sanded until my fingers bled. Brenda and Mark, of course, were still living upstairs, and they decided to be childish. They thought the legal notice to vacate that Charles had served them was a bluff. They thought I was just a crazy old woman having a tantrum and that I'd eventually cool down, they'd handle me, and this would all go away. So, during the open house, they blasted angry music from their unit. They refused to let the realtor show their apartment, claiming they had rights, which, as month-to-month tenants at will who had been served, they didn't. Mark apparently stood on their landing and tried to warn potential buyers about foundation issues. There were none, and a crazy landlord, which was, I suppose, technically true now. It didn't matter. A cash offer doesn't care about a tenant's bad attitude. The offer came in on Monday morning. All cash, 20% over asking, from a young doctor and his wife who were relocating from Boston. They loved the character and wanted to close in 10 days. I was back in Charles's office on Tuesday. I signed the papers. My hand didn't shake. I thought about the 30 years. I thought about the sawdust, the smell of wood stain, the feel of the old oak under my cracked hands. I thought about cognitive decline. When I signed my name Eleanor Vance, it felt like the first time I'd written it in a decade. The next morning, Wednesday, the realtor came back. He took down the blue for sale sign. He reached into his truck and he pulled out the most beautiful sign I have ever seen, bright red. One single glorious word, sold. I sat by my window. I made myself a fresh pot of coffee from my own 1,940 seconds Era pot, not the non-toxic one. I poured it into my favorite mug, and I just watched. I was waiting, and I didn't have to wait long. Leo, my poor sweet grandson, told me all about it later. He was, unfortunately for him, right in the blast radius. Brenda was at his high school. It was a Tuesday night. She was at a PTA meeting, naturally. She was on the Student Wellness Committee, which I'm sure involved a lot of curating and boundaries and probably kale. According to Leo, it was one of those typically heated meetings. Someone was arguing about the new lunch vendor. Brenda, of course, was at the center of it, explaining why the proposed menu didn't align with the school's energetic mission. And her phone, on the table, started buzzing. A text from a neighbor. She ignored it. Protecting her energy, I assume. It buzzed again. Another neighbor. Then a call. She silenced it, annoyed. Then, Mark called. Frantic. She had to take that one. She stepped out into the hallway, annoyed. Leo said he just watched her through the glass door. He saw her face. It went blank. Then it went white. Then it crumpled. What do you mean, what sign? She was apparently whispering, then yelling. What do you mean, sold? She didn't come back. She didn't excuse herself from the PTA meeting. She didn't explain the kale budget. She just ran. Leo said she sprinted to her car, that SUV I co-signed for, and tore out of the parking lot. She tore home, driving like a madwoman. She must have broken every speed limit. She screeched to a halt, not even pulling into the driveway, but just stopping, half in, half out of the street. And she saw it. There, on the lawn she thought was hers, was the sign. Sold. It wasn't a discussion. It wasn't a feeling. It wasn't a negotiation. It was a fact. And to make it all so much worse, or, from my perspective, so much better, the new owners were there. The young doctor and his wife, they'd been given their keys. They were standing on the porch, my porch, their porch taking a selfie. They were smiling. They were young and happy, and they had just bought their future. Brenda just stood by her car, in the middle of the road, in her Lululemon yoga pants, and she started to scream. Leo told me it wasn't a word. It was just a sound. A long, high-pitched wail of someone who had just tried to use an ATM, only to be told the account didn't exist anymore. It was the sound of consequences, and it was the sweetest sound I'd heard in 10 years. I didn't go to the window. I didn't need to. I just sat at my kitchen table, sipping my coffee, and I let that raw, wounded wail wash over me. I'd been waiting for it. Then came the slam of the SUV door, the crunch of her running footsteps on the gravel path, and then the pounding. It wasn't a knock. It was an assault. Bam, 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 a frantic, childish, entitled pounding on my front door. The one Frank and I had stained ourselves, that perfect shade of mahogany, the one I'd polished for 30 years. I heard the jingle of a key, a frantic, scratching sound, then a frustrated grunt. She'd forgotten about the deadbolt. I had engaged it the day they tried to make me sign those papers. It had not been unbolted since. "Let me in," she shrieked. "I know you're in there, Mom. You can't do this." I calmly walked to the door. I took a breath. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even upset. I felt light. I slid the deadbolt. The thunk was so final. I opened the door and she practically fell in. She was a wreck. Her wellness mask was gone. This was the real Brenda. Face blotchy and red, her eyes wide with a kind of primal panic. Her Lululemon outfit was rumpled. She was still clutching her printed-out PTA meeting agenda in one hand. "You can't," she screamed, her voice cracking. "You can't do this." I just stood there. "Can't do what, Brenda? Be more specific. You've accused me of so many things lately. The sign, you sold my home." I let the silence hang in the air for a beat. I stepped back, letting her see the living room behind me. Or what was left of it. It was full of boxes, stacks and stacks of brown cardboard boxes. My sofa was gone. The coffee table was gone. My life, my 30 years in this house, was neatly categorized, taped up, and labeled in my own clean archival script. Rare books, photos, 1,980 to 2,000. Frank letters. Brenda's eyes darted from the sign outside to the boxes inside, and her face just collapsed. The rage gave way to a dawning, sickening horror. This wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't an episode. This was an exit plan. "What? What is this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "What did you do?" I walked over to a box labeled Kitchen Sentimental and picked up my Sharpie. I taped the box shut. The sound of the tape ripping from the dispenser was loud in the empty room. "I'm packing," I said, not looking at her. "Packing? Packing for what? For Senior Solutions. Did they get to you?" I finally looked up. "Brenda, you were my inspiration. You really were." What are you talking about?" "All your little phrases, all your wellness advice." I finally decided to take it. I picked up a box of old china. "You remember what you told me when you threw out my grandmother's skillet? You said, 'Mom, you have to curate your life.' So, I did." I pointed with the marker to the boxes. "I'm curating. This is what I'm keeping. The letters from my husband. The photos of you when you were 5, before you learned to hate me. My books, my history." I then gestured vaguely toward the ceiling, toward her unit. "And I'm decluttering. I don't. You told me to get rid of anything that doesn't bring me joy. You said, protect your energy. You said, set boundaries." I put the cap on the Sharpie. Click. "So I am. I'm setting a boundary. A very large one. It's called a property line, and you're on the wrong side of it. I found a lot of things in this house that weren't bringing me joy, Brenda. I just started with you." She was speechless. Her mouth was open, but no sound was coming out. The wellness coach had no script for this. Where will we go?" she finally stammered. That was it. The real question. Not how are you? Not why. Just where will we go? "That," I said, "is a question for you and Mark. As you've so often reminded me, I have to protect my own aura, and honestly, where you will go is a problem that has a very negative effect on my energy, so I'm setting a boundary. That is your problem, not mine." The tears came then. Hot, angry, desperate tears. "You're a monster," she cried. "I'm your daughter. I'll sue you. I'll tell everyone. I'll tell the new owners. I'll tell the judge you have dementia. You'll what?" I walked over to my empty kitchen counter. All that was left was a single, sealed, white legal envelope. "You'll tell them about my cognitive decline. Go ahead. My lawyer, Mr. Henderson, still has the 1953 edition. It's a very detailed archive. I'm sure he'd be thrilled to show it to a judge, especially the page about Mark's crypto ventures using my money. That's fraud, by the way. I had him check." She stopped. Dead. She knew. "The new owners," I said, picking up the envelope, "are a lovely young couple, a doctor and his wife. They paid cash. They wanted a 30-day close, and they were willing to let you stay until the end of the month as a courtesy." I held the envelope out to her, but then I continued, my voice ice cold. You and Mark decided to blast music during their open house. You decided to harass them. You tried to scare them. I tapped the envelope. This is a formal, legal 72-hour eviction notice served on behalf of the new owners, who now, legally, own your unit. Charles had it drawn up, just in case. You are no longer my tenants. You are their trespassers. You have until Friday. If you are not out, they will have the sheriff remove you. She just stared at the envelope as if it were a snake. Take it, Brenda. Her hand, shaking, reached out and took the paper that ended her life. Now, I said, walking to my front door and opening it wide. Get out of my unit. You're trespassing. She just stared at the envelope. Her hand, the one that had been so ready to take my signature and my life, was trembling. She didn't take it. She just looked at my face as if she was seeing me for the first time. The mom was gone. The resource was gone. All that was left was Eleanor. You're a monster, she whispered. It had so much less power than when she'd screamed it. No, Brenda, I said, my voice quiet. I'm just not your mother anymore. I'm just the architect. She turned, her shoulders slumped. She walked out of the door, bumping her shoulder against the frame she'd run through 1,000 times as a child. She left the envelope on the floor. I didn't pick it up. I just closed the door. I re-engaged the deadbolt. Thunk. The next 3 days were the strangest of my life. The new owners, a lovely couple, had been so appalled by Brenda's and Mark's behavior that they'd agreed to let Charles, my lawyer, handle it. I never saw them again. I heard them. Oh, I heard them. The shouting, the slamming of doors, the sound of things being thrown. It was the soundtrack of two people who had never had to pack their own lunch, suddenly being forced to move out of the 5-star resort that had been their home for 10 years. I just packed. I labeled my boxes. I drank my tea. My moving truck came on Thursday. I was gone by noon. I spent my last night in that house on a simple cot in an empty living room. I looked at the moonlight streaming in, hitting the hardwood floors Frank and I had polished. It was the first time in a decade the house felt truly, beautifully mine. And then, it wasn't. And that was even better. Charles told me the new owners arrived on Friday at noon with the sheriff just as the 72-hour notice expired. They didn't need him. The upstairs unit was empty. Well, not empty. They'd left behind a sea of trash, bags of it. They'd left a broken lamp. They'd left a hole in the drywall, about the size of Mark's fist. And, according to the new owner, they had taken the brand new, non-toxic pan Brenda had bought me. I had to laugh at that. Of course she did. I didn't know where they went, and for 6 weeks, I didn't care. I had moved into a small, bright 2-bedroom condo overlooking a park. I had enough money from the sale to be comfortable for the rest of my life. I had my books, my pictures, and my new phone. A phone with a new private number. A phone that, for 6 weeks, was blissfully silent. Then, one Tuesday, it buzzed. It was Leo. I'd given him my new number with one very strict rule. You can call me any time, just to talk. But I will not talk about your parents. I will not send money. That archive is closed. He'd been good about it. We'd texted a few times. But this was the first time he'd called. Grandma. His voice was small. He sounded like he was in a tunnel. Leo, honey, are you all right? Where are you? I'm at the public library. After school. Can I just talk? I'm not asking for anything. I need to tell someone who's not them. And so, he told me. He painted me a picture of their new life. I didn't see the fallout. I heard it, through the voice of my grandson, and it was more vivid and more beige than I could have imagined. They'd found an apartment. A garden apartment complex out by the airport, where the stucco was a peeling, sad shade of tan, and the garden was a patch of sun-scorched grass. The rent was due on the 1st of the month, and the 1st of the month, as it turned out, was a boundary that didn't care about Brenda's aura. The fintech ventures, the crypto dreams. It was all smoke. It was all my money. The moment my bank account was no longer their bank account, all of Mark's investors and contacts evaporated. Mark, the entrepreneur, was now a rideshare driver. He was using the SUV, the one I was still the co-signer on. Charles was working on that, but it was messy. Leo told me about Mark's new career. He'd come home every night, stinking of fast food and rage. He was apparently a very motivated driver, until he wasn't. He got kicked off the app, Grandma, Leo whispered into the phone. Last night. A passenger gave him 1 star, said he was aggressive. I heard him on the phone with customer service. He was screaming. I have a degree, he kept yelling. I'm not your servant. I just closed my eyes. Oh, Mark, I thought. You were so good at being a servant's master, not so good at being the servant. And Mom, I asked, my voice quiet. I couldn't help it. I had to know. What about your mother? Leo was quiet for a long time. Mom got a job. Of course she did, the first of the month. It was coming. Where? I asked. Grandma, you're not going to believe it. Leo, where? Costco. I didn't say anything. She's in the food court, Leo said, his voice cracking. I had to go there after school, to ask her for bus money. I found her. She was wearing the red vest. And a hairnet. A hairnet. My daughter. The wellness coach. The woman who lectured me on toxins and curating my life was wearing a polyester blend vest and a hairnet. I saw her, Grandma. Leo's voice was just a broken whisper now. This guy in a suit, he just left his tray on the table. Ketchup and soda spilled everywhere. He just walked away. And the manager, this lady with a big headset, yelled, Brenda, table 4, we're getting slammed! Leo took a breath. And her shoulders just slumped. She grabbed a gray rag, and she went to clean it up. She went to clean up his half-eaten hot dog. Her boundary was a wet rag. Her protected energy was a $1.50 hot dog combo. Did you talk to her? I asked. Did you get the bus money? No, he said, so quietly I could barely hear him. I couldn't. I just turned around, and I walked home. It was 3 miles. I sat there, in my new, clean condo, listening to the silence on the other end of the line. I should have felt something. Triumph? Vengeance? I just felt peace. The peace of a balanced ledger. The peace of a bill, finally being paid. It's just, Leo said, the first of the month is next week, and they're already fighting. They're not going to make it, are they, Grandma? That, my love, I said, looking out my new window at the green park below, is, for the first time in 30 years, not my problem. And it wasn't. It just wasn't. The phone call with Leo ended, and I sat there in my new living room, surrounded by my boxes. But these weren't the archive boxes from the duplex. These were life boxes, kitchen, everyday, living room, books. I'd already unpacked the one labeled Frank letters. Months passed. The winter turned to a bright, crisp spring. My condo, which had at first felt sterile and new, began to feel like me. I had my books on the shelves, my photos on the wall. I had a view of a park, and every morning I watched people walk their dogs, and I felt a sense of peace that was so deep, it was almost boring. And it was the most wonderful feeling I'd ever had. I volunteered. Not at a library, but at the City Historical Society. My cognitive decline apparently made me an expert at identifying unlabeled photos from the 1,970 seconds. But my real project was Leo. He came over every Sunday. He'd take the bus, let himself in with his own key, and we'd spend the afternoon on what we called the new archive. Today, he was sitting at my dining room table, a high-res scanner humming quietly beside him. I was on the other side, wearing white cotton gloves, carefully unfolding a piece of history. This, I said, is the real 1953 edition. I handed him a letter. It was brittle, the paper thin as a moth's wing, the ink faded from a deep blue to a pale, ghostly gray. It was from my father to my mother, sent from Korea. My archive, I told him, the one in the binder. That was just a ledger. It was an archive of debts. An archive of, no, this. I gestured to the scanner, the the laptop, the stack of letters from Frank, from my parents, from his great-grandparents. This is an archive of yes, this is the one that matters. This is the story of who we are, not what we're owed. He looked at me, his 6-year-old face so serious, so adult. He'd seen more than any kid should have to. Mom and, well, they never cared about this stuff, he said, carefully placing the letter on the scanner. No, I said. They only ever saw the price of things. They never understood the value. Your grandfather, he understood value. He kept every letter. I was about to hand him another one, a V-mail from 1944, when his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it. We had a rule, no phones during archive time. But he froze. His face went through a whole series of emotions I couldn't read. Confusion, annoyance, and then something else. What is it, Leo? He just slid the phone across the table to me. It was a text from Brenda. It wasn't words. It wasn't I miss you. It wasn't I'm sorry. It wasn't I need money. It was a picture. Just a picture, taken in what looked like a bad, beige apartment. It was a picture of a piece of paper, a check stub. It was from Costco Wholesale. It showed hours worked 40. It showed net pay, $612.47. I just stared at it. Brenda's first full, 40-hour week paycheck. The first paycheck she'd earned, I realized, in her entire adult life. The first receipt that she had generated. Leo was watching me, his breath held. I think he was waiting for me to, I don't know, to cry, to smile, to say, "It's time to call your mother." I looked at the picture for a long, long time. The $612.47, the result of 40 hours of hairnets and $1.50 hot dogs and cleaning up other people's ketchup. I slid the phone back to him. He looked at me, confused. "Grandma." I took a breath. I looked at the check stub, then at Leo, then back at the 1953 letter on the scanner. "Well," I said, my voice perfectly even, "that's a start." And that was all I said. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't an invitation. It was just an acknowledgement. The ledger was no longer my business, but I could still recognize a payment when I saw one. Leo just nodded. He understood. He understood the difference between a start and a finish. I picked up the next letter. "Now," I said, carefully unfolding it. This one is from 1982. This is from your grandfather. This is the letter he wrote me the day he found out. Well, the day he found out he was going to be a father. He was terrified. He thought he'd be terrible at it. I handed it to Leo. He was wrong about that. He was a wonderful father. He just didn't know how to stop. Leo took the letter, his eyes wide. He was scared, terrified. I smiled. Your grandfather, he was just a man, Leo. A good man who wanted to give his daughter the world. He just gave her everything. And in the end, everything was just a little too much. Leo looked at the check stub on his phone. Then he looked at the 1982 letter in his hand. And he turned off his phone. "Show me," he said, his voice firm, "how to scan this one without the edges blurring." I smiled. The archive was safe. The real one. And I smiled. The real archive was safe. For 40 years, I was the keeper of my family's memories. I was their archivist. I forgot to be the architect of my own life. My daughter and her husband told me I was suffering from cognitive decline. They told me I was stuck in the past. They were half right. I was stuck in the past, but I wasn't losing my mind. I was just reviewing the receipts. They thought my value was in what I could give them. They forgot that the person who builds the house is the only one who knows where all the load-bearing walls are. And I was the only one who knew how to take it all down. They learned in a Costco food court what I had to learn in my own living room. Self-respect is the one bill that's always due. So let me ask you, if life handed you a brand new, unwritten page, would you have the courage to turn to it? If this story resonated with you, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in the hardest of times.